Thank you. This is such a great room, and it's been so fun to be here and listening to people. I'm setting a timer because I chat and I lose track of time. Also, like Jessica, it was great to hear Jessica. I'm really used to reading between bands for like 5 to 10 minutes. So this does feel quite luxurious, and I have no idea. I'm like, okay, how many poems does that turn out to? So yeah, that's hence the timer. And I wanted to thank Deanna and Colin and everybody at Tree and Black Squirrel because, yeah, I was talking to my friend Scott about the fact this is a very cozy room. I could kind of really settle in here. Might find me in a corner in the middle of the night. This is From the Windows, the Alley. Some days I'm not on. I hide inside the city. Someday I'll say thank you for your invitation to come see the pilot whales skim the coast of Cape Breton. Don't tempt me. I'm working this summer on inventing the life I am already living. It takes practice to see myself without a mirror. The ivy leaps over the fence. Next year will be different. And this next poem, I always get kind of embarrassed when there's like I do have a lot of part-time jobs. So the Basement Review, which I do with this singer-songwriter Jason Collette, is super fun. We've been doing it for a number of years at the Dakota Tavern, and then we sometimes do larger shows at other venues. And we've paired a lot of really great writers with different bands. And one year we had Margaret Atwood read poems backed by the Sadies. Something I was able to hook up because I'm married to the drummer in that band. And so my husband they were quite nervous about it, as you might imagine. And they're quite big fans of Margaret's. And, they're also like all 8 feet tall. And she's like really tiny. So there's some really hilarious images on, like she looks like a little tree gnome, and he's like with like an orc or something hovering over Travis. But so some of the performance photos are really worth looking up online. But so they'd got the work that she was going to read ahead of time, and they were kind of trying to plan out what they were going to play, and they had a list of everything. And one of the poems was called, I think it was The Truth About Werewolves. And one of the themes that runs through my book is about sort of memory, and I'm very interested in the way that we sometimes mishear things or misremember things, and they take on a whole nother life, the way language can sort of slip into different pockets of your brain. And so my husband was very concerned when he thought he heard Margaret introduce a poem, The Trouble with Wormholes. And he was like, I don't have that poem. Like, I don't know what poem that is. And so he was telling me about it later. He didn't find it nearly as funny as I did. But I thought it was a really good title. I frankly prefer it to The Truth About Werewolves. I think like wormholes, like this is The Trouble with Wormholes. This is a long preamble. See, this is why the timer. Okay, I'll get like 3 poems read in 20 minutes. The Trouble with Wormholes. How many times must I learn the lesson of compression? Let go of everything you know and start from scratch. One friend performing backbends on a beach while another snaps his tibia on an icy patch of Saskatchewan. I don't think I'm suffering. My days a series of unexpected gifts, punctuated by a blast of the family rage, shot deep into my soft plexus. It occurs to me I don't have to be so many people. If you're staying alive, spinning stories, it's suddenly a skill that you talk too much. I'm not sure it's smart to unlock the portal. The reformed raver claimed he saw my inner wheels spin. Red Cloud, are there wars where you are? Your great-great-grandson appeared on Democracy Now! With a plan. Will my generation be remembered for anything I haven't forgotten? They mine the hills for gold, they mine the hills for uranium, and all around the world columns are cracking. I've watched you soar all day. Please teach me how you do that. And there's no such thing as blue water. I keep telling this little anecdote, and I really got to stop because it's going to bite me in the ass. But really good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, her father is a self-help book author, quite successful. We could look on the shelves for him after. And a lovely man, but we do not always totally see eye to eye about everything. Anyways, he makes a cameo in this poem, which I hope he never finds out. And if I stop telling roomfuls of people who may know him, that would be more likely to be how this shakes out. There's no such thing as blue water. I've been thinking that montage is a mental technique for accepting unity as a convulsive illusion. I feel sick. I hate it when my stories have holes, though I suspect there's where the truth leaks out. So go back to bed. Maybe it's laziness, maybe the delivery system is flawed. If the gods are making a movie, I've spent years sneaking out for smoke breaks between takes. I do violence to myself. I imagine the ones I love dead in their favorite chairs, dead in distant car crashes. Who are those girls who wear lipstick to watch TV? The women I know go shut-in, sleep in their clothes for days in a row. A self-help author revealed to me with great confidence that life is swinging from branch to branch in a fog. And I thought, of course he's right. Of course he's wrong. Let's say we are always at point A. From space, the ocean is only a mirror. So one of the things that repeats also throughout the book and is connected to my interest in memory is, I guess now about 4 or 5 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with frontal lobe dementia. And so I've become increasingly involved in her care, an only child. And since I'm American, she's in Buffalo, which is about as close as I can get her to Toronto. So it's been quite difficult. We were very close. And one thing actually that continues on, I mean, she just moved, from different levels of care. She just moved to a nursing home. So I just sort of absorbed all of her possessions that we hadn't given away at this point. So thinking of that, this poem came from at an earlier stage of that process, but I wanted to read it tonight just because I've been thinking a lot about that in the last couple of weeks since that happened. This is Her Lost Lucky Charms. Four-leaf clover found where? Folded in paper. Perfume from France, bottle blue as a new bruise. Hand-carved sandalwood box, white shell. Red felt. Tiny dried seahorse. Tiny dried sea. And then continuing on similar subject matter, I really love the poet Bernadette Mayer, and she recently published a chapbook called The Helens of Troy, New York, in which she interviewed a bunch of women named Helen who lived in Troy, New York, and wrote these great portraits of them. And it's great. Some of them actually have photos, and they're so badass and tough, and like braids and like this sort of red face. They're great. And she uses a lot of poetry forms, like sort of what we would consider possibly more old-fashioned received forms like sestinas and sonnets and villanelles, and yet she was using really natural language from these interviews. And there was something about the contrast of the form, particularly the circular form of this villanelle, which I'm very attracted to, with the flatness of natural language that I found to create a really interesting tension. And so... And I'm also very interested in the way that stories take on new meanings each time they get repeated. Again, that's very connected to conversations with my mother over the last couple of years. So this is Good Day, Villanelle. You ran naked out the door. The neighbors laughed. I chased you down. I hardly see you anymore. I know you're busy. Did I tell you when you were little how you ran naked out the door? You got halfway down the street before I caught you in my arms. I hardly see you anymore. I I think I told you this before. I was giving you a bath, and then you ran naked out the door. It happened fast. The neighbors laughed. I hardly see you anymore. You have to watch a baby close. I remember once. You ran naked out the door. I hardly see you anymore. Thank you. I never know when in the set to read that one because it's always a little bit of an awkward transition. Thank you. That's always spontaneous applause is like kind of what it's all about. So I'm going to read. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. And my thing hasn't gone off yet. So this is a couple poems about poetry. I wrote a bunch of bios of poets whose work were in the public domain in a really compressed period of time, and there was a pattern. I like these patterns when I see them. So this is for all the poets in the room. Poets in the public domain. Found delirious on the streets of Baltimore, died days later. Shipwreck at the age of 40, typhoid fever 44, orphaned at 14, dead from tuberculosis at 25. Lost at 27 on a French hospital ship anchored in the Aegean Sea. Sister stabbed mother to death in a fit of anxiety. Drowned at the age of 30. Worked at the post office until death at 37. Died of fever in Greece on way to war. Went down sailing at age 29. Died of pneumonia while commanding a hospital in Boulogne. Stabbed to death in bar fight. Killed in action 1 week before war ended. Asylum. Drank to death. Jumped off an ocean liner. Overdosed on sleeping pills. Drowned swimming in Lake St. Clair in August. Sick with Graves' disease for many years. Died of brain cancer. Smallpox. Swallowed by a sudden storm after seeing Doppelganger. I read that often. When I read that around poets, they laugh, and musicians get very uncomfortable. They're like, "No, we have the deaths."
Why the poets would laugh?
Well, I think it's just so relentlessly dark that it's the only emotional reaction that I think sometimes we have left. There's a lot I left out. I mean, there's a lot of, and the whole 20th century is chock-a-block with, Frank O'Hara got run over by the one car on Fire Island. There's a lot of material. So, and speaking of dead poets, this is a poem for Robin Blazer, who's a poet I really loved, who I had the chance of meeting very briefly, maybe a couple years before he died, and he was very old. He was at the Griffin Poetry Prize. He either won the prize that year or a lifetime. I don't know. They gave him something. He won a couple things in a couple years in a row. I can't remember which one it was, but someone introduced us and said something flattering about me or something. And this was a few years ago, and he gave me like this. He was very small, and he had this huge ring on his hand. And he gave me this really theatrical up and down, and he said, "Well, you look like you've got it going on," and then like blew smoke everywhere. I fell in love with him forever. So this is a poem for Robin Blazer. Oh, I know your thoughts are with the gods, so young and loose. I sit still and watch you materialize as your ring, the eye of your hand, checks me out. I feast on your approval. My erased attachment attracts it. The sun rolled over White Sands National Park, a wedding dance of the trackless dunes of my design. You see, all are tamed out of our chains in this way. Light freezes into cubes for our cocktails. Atmospheric gases are trapped on their planets. I must keep my feet on the floor if I'm ever to achieve your speed. You blew smoke at me and smiled. Nothing is so easy. Okay. So I'm just going to read a group of the poems at the back. Let's see, how much talking did I do? So I'll read 3 poems. So yeah, this Dear Leader, the title comes from sort of a sequence of poems that are a direct address to a fictional, I should say, a mythical cult leader. And my mother spent a couple years before I was born in Los Angeles at the end of the 60s, and it's kind of impressive to me she didn't actually end up falling into a cult. So I've just sort of collaged actual biographical details about her life with other things that I know that were happening at that time, and just sort of the atmosphere of paranoia and conspiracy theories and things like that. And I have to say, if you become interested in conspiracy theories and you want to do some research, there's some stuff on the internet. You can spend some lot of time on there. So I'll just read 3 to end. Dear Leader, as you know, I did not join the Hole in the Universe gang or follow Father Yod of the ridiculous robes. I flowed through my crises, beautiful as a bruise, and alone. A man I loved drove his motorcycle off the fat lip of Big Sur into glittering oblivion. A new nation of Penelopes practiced the art of the loom, planting a never-finished forest in which wildflowers bloomed on the backs of jean jackets and hand-sewn throw pillows, while I waited for you to choose me. The waitress at the health food restaurant was a lemon-scented sun to my Death Valley moon. I swooned as out the window your dark cluster rose in the sky. How glorious was your shining forth from the horizon when you detonated the 2 lands with your terrible rays. I starved till my bones shone, and your voice rang in my ear. Dear Leader, I was too timid to be slime queen. See, I have a couple minutes. I was too timid to be slime queen, the beauty who communed with the soft, bubbling scum on someone's lake after lunching on lysergic acid with a gang of pranksters. The age of gilded gurus continues on under corporate sponsorship, and still the comfortable suffer in their well-cut pantsuits. Cruel California calls out for fresh recruits. Killer converts map the continent's most generative conference centers. Please accept this pamphlet illustrated with mail order aura enlargers. Are you illuminated? At the bottom of the Pacific, microscopic monsters chase every bioluminescent organism twinkling in the brink. In my youth, I too was a magnet, and I did not dim for decades. Set adrift, I learned to shuck my shell, oozing out into the waters of truth. My head shall not be taken from me. My head shall not be taken. I don't want to get closer to like the 20-minute mark. I like to be nice and comfortably under the 20-minute mark. So I won't actually read that last poem, but and I'm going to end shilling. So my books are $15 if you want to buy one. But again, this was such a great night, and I'm really grateful that I was invited. And thank you for coming and listening. Thanks.